Hey everyone, today I'm going to be talking about writing a fiction book outline, what kind of an outline I would start creating. I'm going to be using an outline that I've used as a ghostwriter before. Obviously, I've changed the formatting and how it looks to kind of suit my own personal taste. Your outline can be done on paper. It can be done digitally. And I'm going to show you a couple different ways that I've seen outlining being done. And the first kind of way that an outline can be achieved is with a very simple Google Doc. On the side here, we have a whole bunch of headings, different kinds of headings for different sections that achieve a variety of information for the writer. You can see here we got everything from structure, style, and genre down to tropes, themes, motifs, story elements, everything. So I'm going to go through this outline today, and then I'm going to show other kinds of outlines as well. Maybe in a separate recording, we'll see. And so, yeah, let's just go step by step through this outline. And yeah. Okay, so first for general information, we have the title, the subtitle, and the author. So this is going to be basically the main name for your book or project. Then you're going to have your subtitle, which will be handling any additional information, let's say about a series, or some subtitles will hold tropes as a signal to the readers and the algorithm about what your book is going to be about, essentially. And this is very helpful for marketing. I myself am a huge hater of the grossly long subtitles, but some people really need to see that in the title to know, oh yeah, this is something worth even clicking on. The cover might look good, the title might be engaging, but if the subtitle doesn't have those keywords that they're looking for, they might continue scrolling. So it's up to you what you feel you need to do in this instance. And then, of course, just for clarity's sake, I put down which author here. This is particularly useful if you have multiple pseudonyms that you're writing underneath. You should keep track who is doing what. It would be a real shame if you accidentally mistook one name for another name, and yeah, just keep everything nice and neat. This might feel like really stupid to kind of put up here, but honestly, I'm a huge proponent for just being organized and thorough. Next up, we got market research. So market research is looking at who your competition is and how you share this audience with that competition. So for this competition right here, you're going to write down books that your book will directly compete for attention with. So don't just write down any books. Write down very specific books that you understand and you believe that the readers will be also reading. And then here we have the question about what is the manuscript about. And this is a one-sentence recommendation or tagline. So you're going to keep it very simple. You're going to keep it very, very short and simple. And then you're going to show the manuscript's positioning, who your readers are, and what experience you want to create. You want to talk about what do you want your readers to remember or what will resonate with them. And of course, just to be thorough, you want to write down what your target audience is. So if we take a look over here, this is a fiction book outline that we created on stream. Here we have the general information, and you notice the title and subtitle are empty because you don't have to always have your titles figured out right away. And then here we have market research, and here are the general titles that we are aiming for. You could see that I chose titles that are quite light, quite like more like young adult fantasy, but not like young adult female fantasy. I'm talking about like more aimed at male interests. And here I filled in for stream, why should we care about the competition? And the reason why we care about understanding our competition is, first, we will know the genre expectations linked to the genre that we're writing for and the niche that we're tackling. We can recognize trends and capitalize on them. We can analyze and identify missing niches so we can give people what they want before they know they want it. And also, you want to make sure that you not just understand what expectations are for the genre, but you can fulfill the tropes and the styles that are often common in there so that people will have a good feeling when they're reading your book. So here we have what the manuscript is about. So a young man's journey to hero, the hero's journey, as he figures out the mystery of a magical artifact that he finds. My manuscript targets young men between the age of 16 and 25 who appreciate short novels filled with action, adventure, magic, and technology. Empowering message for young men, complete with exciting combat, getting the girl and overcoming challenges as well as getting his mentor's approval and being recognized as a man. And this is obviously going to be for teen male readers between 16 and 25 years of age. And adult men may also enjoy it. So this is kind of how I do it. I do it with bullet points. I keep it nice and neat because I may have to remind myself quickly later on. If your notes are messy, you will not refer to your notes, and then you will get lost, and then you will start forgetting what you're even doing, and then you'll be fucked. So if you keep your notes clean, you're more likely to go back and review them. So keep your notes clean. Structure, style, and genre. So here we're going to look at the basic structure of the book, which includes the word count, the chapter amount, words per chapter. You're going to decide, are you going to have any prologues, epilogues, afterwards, all of that kind of stuff? Are there any framing structures for your narrative? You're going to determine your point of view and other general narrative devices, such as alternating narrators, the type of narrators, first person, third person, Lord forbid, second person, past or present tense verbs. You can choose a style. There's a whole list that you can choose from. You can even consider comparable writing styles. What authorial approaches will inspire your writing? This is more for ghostwriting. So I will ask my client, what do you want your book to sound like? And they will give me the book that they want, and I'll read it and then attempt to copy it. That's how that works. Then we have here genres and subgenres, right? So you'll choose what genres your books are about. So if we go back over here to the example, we decided for a short book, only 40,000 words long, 2,000 words per chapter, 20 chapters long, with an epilogue. Maybe a prologue, not sure, but definitely an epilogue. We determined past tense, only one narrative perspective, so kind of limited. Third person perspective limited. The styles would be descriptive, dialogue heavy, humorous, realistic, and to the point. And it will be light on humor, but there will be some there. So the comparable writing styles would be the Dresden Files, Ender's Game, and Gardens of the Moon. Visceral, impactful writing, a balance of exposition and dialogue, intense combat and violence, meaningful interactions. And then, of course, we have our genres and subgenres ticked off here. So as you can see, I like to keep things very neat, very orderly, very concise. If you are writing this in a notebook, you would just list the stuff that you want. You don't have to write everything out and then check it off, obviously. And then, of course, same thing for tropes, themes, and motifs. So you're going to choose a few tropes. Don't go too much on them. Like, just choose a handful, less than a handful. Don't go too crazy. And honestly, you might think, oh, there will be no tropes in my story. Highly unlikely. There's going to be a trope somewhere. Same for themes. You should only have really 1 or 2 themes. Keep it simple. Don't go crazy. So a trope is more like a story pattern. A theme is more kind of closer to like the message or the idea that you're tackling behind the story itself. Motifs are something that are kind of linked to the theme. So what images could help to emphasize your theme? So let's say you were going to talk about change versus tradition. And to emphasize this theme, you're going to have this wheelbarrow that over time through the book becomes more and more disused. Or for example, if it's linked to sacrifice, it might be like that of a flag, for example. So whatever it is that your theme is, if you want to have a motif, whether it is an animal or an object, or even what a person might even like a kind of like a mantra or something that kind of pops up every now and then to highlight it. You can put down those kinds of patterns underneath motif. Not all books need a motif, by the way. I find that motifs go into lit fic territory. So as you can see, I ticked off some tropes: ancient secrets, a loyal friend, monsters, mysterious things are happening, hero's journey, happy ending, MacGuffin, humans can be evil, reluctant hero, unexpected love interest, unlikely allies, traveling long distances. Your book will have tropes, let's just say that. Here we have a bunch of different themes. I have quite a bit for this book. But it's a very general book, right? So yeah. No motifs for this book because it's not that kind of a book. All right, now we get down to story elements. Now there are 3 main story elements: character, setting, and plot. Those are the 3 main story elements. So for each character, you're going to want to create a little character sheet for them. Now you could use, like in D&D character sheet, you can just write on a notepad, draw some pictures. As a ghostwriter, I would have to communicate with the client. So of course we had something like this, where we had their name, their general history, their background, recent history, who are they, what do they want, their physical appearance, their physical traits, fashion, poise, posture, other traits, their personality traits, what do they like or dislike, what are they like under pressure, strengths, weaknesses, flaws, and their goals, their internal conflict, what are they struggling with internally, the internal stakes, what is at stake, what negative and positive things will happen when they win or lose. So here's the key. If they win, there should still be a side negative. There should still be some form of a loss. And if they lose, you can just have them lose all out, but you can also have them still learn even though they've lost. So the winning and losing is not like everything has to be perfect. There can be a nuance of loss and victory with the stakes. So for example, you could say, if I do really well at the interview, I'm going to get this job, but my friend will not be able to get the job because there's only one position. And then the victory condition is I've gotten the job, but my friend now has to keep seeking employment, and so on and so forth. Kind of like that. So if you have some internal stakes where there's some bite to it, your reader may feel more tension and may feel more interested in what's actually going to happen because there are stakes. Something bad will happen. Something good will happen. But how does the character negotiate that? And I also like putting down a final growth target. This kind of helps you keep track of whether you're moving your character through their progression. And this is particularly important if you're writing something that is more psychologically focused, something that's a bit more modern. You're going to want to have a track you're going to want to keep track of where they're going as a character. So let's take a look at an example here. So we have a person called Carwyn. Win to his friends, Aisling. Here we have his background. Okay, his family, his background, his parents, and we have some recent developments and his age. So we have his general background. You notice I'm keeping this very straight and to the point. There are a lot of people who get way too involved with their characters' backgrounds, and it gets insane. So rein your world building shit in, and don't over obsess over what's going on in their background. Keep it simple, keep it straightforward, and if this character does have some complicated background, take the time here to write it out, but ask yourself how much of this is me just losing the plot and how much of it is really necessary. So who they are, it's pretty obvious for this one. The main character who goes on a hero's journey to save his city and himself from evil. What do they want? At first, they want an easy life full of pleasure and praise. He seeks validation from local nobles. Upon interacting with the artifact and the fallout after, Carwyn's goals begin to shift to more immediate concerns, survival. He transforms into someone who wants the best for himself and the world. So here I talk about how their different desires shift over time. We got some pictures from the internet for their physical appearance. Then I write down their physical traits. Once again, I'm not overthinking this. Just keep it straightforward. If you over-describe, in my opinion, that kind of kills the imaginative muscle that some people like to exercise when they are reading a book. But there are some writers who don't describe enough. So you need to have a certain amount and no more. Fashion. Okay, and here for fashion, we could add in more details here about what exact clothing they're more likely to wear. Poise and posture, and any other important details. Here's what do they like or dislike. What are they like under pressure? So gives into pressure, gives up easily, easy way out. Their strengths, natively good at fighting, charismatic, outgoing, good memory, kind, hope. They have hope. Optimistic type. Weaknesses, going the easy or undisciplined way, attractive girls. Flaws, laziness and vanity. So one important thing to always make sure you have is a clear-cut flaw. It is crazy how many authors or creatives protect their main character from any kind of criticism. Even the best people in my life who have sometimes created something with me have sometimes made the mistake of trying to turn the flaw into a strength. And you can do that in certain situations, but there still should be a flaw that feeds into the weakness. And there still needs to be, as it were, an Achilles heel. So I think if you are not able to right off the bat in one word, at least say one flaw, just one, then I think your character is in trouble. Because if there's no flaw, then there's no internal conflict, there's no growth, there's no character progression, nothing's going on. And this is a serious issue. This is a serious issue. Now, some flaws are smaller or more subtle, and some flaws are quite large. So there's a difference between, for example, a character being lazy or fearful or lacking self-confidence, and a character who's a sociopath or who is on a revenge binge, who's filled with anger and bitterness. So this is, a spectrum. But make sure that whether you're going for subtle or whether you're going all in, you're going big, make sure that it is still very clear what that flaw is. And then here we see the internal conflict. So the conflict is substance over style for this character. Stakes: if he doesn't leave home and deal with the artifact, everyone dies. But if he leaves home to deal with the artifact, he'll have to learn how to survive the hard way and may face serious challenges and still may not succeed. By the end of the story, he learns to persevere and recognizes the importance of character over worldly possession, status, or appearance. Basically, I put in a bottom note here, soy to alpha. So you want to do this for any main character. Some books will have 2 to 3 main characters. For example, in Chronicles of Narnia, there are 4 main characters. So depending on what you're doing, you may need to write this kind of sheet out, anywhere between 1 to 4 or 5 times. If this is your first time writing or planning a book, do yourself a favor. Focus on one character, maybe a secondary character. Down here, we have tertiary characters. This is a bullet list of people with names or no names that might have some impact on the story in general. Only provide the lightest of descriptions here. So if we go down here, we have some people. We got 4 characters. Tertiary characters would be Gav, the tavern owner. Father is Rufus, right? Other side characters down here. Okay, so you could list other characters that your main character will talk with, interact with, talk about, that kind of thing. Now, that's the first story element, which is your characters. And it's really crucial to get this down because the more you know your character, the more you know what's going to happen. If you don't know your character, there's a higher chance that you won't know what's going on. So get that down. Know them inside and out before continuing. Next up, we got setting. Setting is related to time and space. So this is the second story element after characters. So time and location, or time and space, is kind of fun. And this is where people can lose the plot, I'm afraid. Because setting is not to be confused with plot. But some people get stuck in this. And a lot of people, especially I find male clients, male would-be creatives, get stuck here. So what is this? Well, first off, you should probably have some maps. I recommend doing hand-drawn maps, even if they're basic sketches and they're really shitty. If you really want to have a nice map, you can go to something like, I believe, Incarnate and make a really nice map. Do not generate a map with AI. If you generate a map with AI, I will come and hunt you. And like Liam Neeson, I will... anyway. Here, you can see that I have done something a little odd. Okay? I have put in a screen cap of Google Maps. And this is because I wanted to generally get an idea of how far these people would be traveling on foot or on horse. And I wanted to determine the time spent, the duration spent walking. So I relied on something very similar to this because it's very similar to what we're doing in the book. Now, if you can see here, I have very clearly shown how many hours are required. And this allowed me to calculate a 35-day length for the plot, assuming proper sleep, rest, hunting, getting lost, and detouring. So I have now hammered down time duration for the plot. I hate to say this to you, but this is one of the things where a lot of creatives think that they know what they're talking about, and they rarely seem to have really thought about it. It's crazy how much time people can spend on a map and not even really think about how does that affect the time and how it is monitored in the story And honestly, I had some clients straight up tell me, we don't want there to be any time words. So the whole thing takes place in this vacuum, this time vacuum. And this is also, by the way, true of Final Fantasy XIV, which it drives me insane. I think people shouldn't be afraid of just committing, and all they have to do is really just figure out how long does it take for a person to walk somewhere, how long are they going to stay at various stops, what stops are going to cause a hang up, do a general plot, 35-day length, let's say, and then just keep track of it throughout your story. It's not that hard, honestly. Get good. Okay, so then here we have an incarnate map. It's unlabeled, but you can get the general drift. Ordinarily, I would be labeling this with a very simple, image editing software, something like Clip Studio Paint, which is what I have. I would be adding in little labels and things like that. Very easy, very, very easy to do. I highly recommend Incarnate. I'm not sponsored, but I literally recommend it. Now, once you have made your map, and don't spend too much time on your map, once you made your map, you can start having the fun time of naming things. You can get real world references or pictures done. Once again, for this section here, don't go with AI unless that AI picture is exactly how you would want it to go. For general description, you could even start doing like color palettes, choose really strong, vibrant adjectives and sensory details. So you could put all of that in bullet form below each general description. So this is for your primary locations, the most important places where plot and scene is going to happen. You can imagine, if you will, that you are making a movie and you want to really get down the places that the characters are going to stop in and actually have some interaction with the environment. However, even if you are focusing on these things, you should still set aside some time. So for example, down here, I could copy and paste this. And then, let's see, I could put this in here. And then I could just go the X mountains. So let's say the gray mountains. All right. And so then I could put in a picture, a real life picture of a mountain here. And then some description of the mountains. So it's just the mountain range. So I can describe them going over or through the mountain range, right? So I can talk about whether it's cold or hot or warm or sticky or humid. I can talk about the sensory details of what they heard, saw, smelled, tasted, and touched. So all of these things to kind of bring life to what is essentially a JPEG at this point. And then finally, we have time period. Time period is very helpful for a variety of reasons. Time period can go two ways. So first off, the time period could be related to an in book, in novel, in story, lore, and time. So you will want to take note of that if that's important. So if you want to say something like 500 years ago, this happened, then you need to, keep that in the back of your mind. It's also helpful to kind of correlate the kind of aesthetic sense of the book. So for example, this book that I had conceived with the stream is set in medieval time periods around 1100s. There's a 1 month duration for the narrative maximum. And then there's fantasy dates. Now, the fantasy dates, we actually went into the lore, which is timeline. So you can see here, I created a timeline of in 1196, there's an inciting incident, 19 years pass, and then 1215, this is when the story takes place. You notice that this is very, very short. I know some people who, for a single book, will overdo this stuff. And you need to calm down. It's a different thing, however, if you're writing historical fiction, for example, or if you're writing a multi-series book series, right? Like you want to have like multiple books in one series and maybe even multiple series for one universe. Of course, this lore timeline is going to be much more involved. Okay, so this is the lore, right? And then, so we got locations, tertiary locations, off-screen mentions. Just make a bullet list with general descriptors. So let's say a character says, yes, that took place in Angraband in the far north where the shadows lie. And the main character who doesn't know is like, Angraband? I thought it was only legend. No, it is but an ancient ruin half sunken in the chasm of the earth. Right? So, well, how do you know it's sunken in the chasm of the earth? So you might want to put that detail down here. Yeah. Okay, so once again, as I touched on before, you want to really talk about the world. You want to talk about the races, the politics, and any timeline. So the timeline could go up into the time section, the time period, or you could stick it under lore. It's up to you how you want to divide it. So for the world and races and politics, this is where, once again, some people can get really hung up. Try to keep it short and sweet. If you're only dealing with one group of people or two groups of people, just describe them. You don't need to spend time on this ephemeral third group over here that almost has no impact on anything. So try to only focus on what you need in order to get the story told clearly and simply. Too many people actually get caught up in this section here, and they never write their book. Because they fall in love with the world at the cost of writing the narrative. So in my world, there are 3 continents. Continent 1 name, insert a continental map here, set locations for evil/monsters, figure out distances for travel time, not time travel, and I'm going with a north-south European biome. And then we're going to have 2 other continents, and evil is going to originate from continent number 2. But most of the action will take place on the first continent. I'm keeping it simple because this is a 40,000 word book. So that's another thing. If you're doing something really short and sweet, don't be fussing around with some like weird shit. Like, keep it simple. Okay, so races. You want to talk about races or national divisions. You can put them all up in here. Okay, you can put them all up in here. So for example, in this book, you have human races. You have an ancient race of unknown peoples who have become shadowmen. And then there are the potential for zombies. And there's a continental division of North versus South. The North has 1 ruler, and the South has 1 ruler, and you can see each ruler has a different goal. So that this is just for me to know if any character is talking about the political situation, this is how they can refer to it. So I can easily click, go here, and be like, oh yeah, what do I have for this? Okay. So all of that for politics and stuff. Politics, and once again, if you really are writing something that's quite heavy, quite thick, quite detailed, you can break it down, each group, into general description with their ambitions, desires, potential enemies, current conflicts, challenges, mode of overcoming challenges, economic resources, imports, exports, culture and lifestyle, which relates to art, music, famous people, religion, daily life, and then their history, ancient history, recent history, and current events. So all of that can be related to the people groups and the nations that are involved in your book. Now, sometimes you will want to have important items. So you will see here in this outline, I don't have that space for that. But for example, in this book, because it's fantasy, we're going to have an important item, a MacGuffin, which is the seal. And we're going to have a very simple magic system. And if there are additional books planned, you would ideally put it before the outline. And the reason is before you plan the single book outline, you should know what your series book outline is. So you should know, for example, in book 1, we're going to introduce the characters, the worlds, and lead up to a singular conflict, let's say. And then in book 2, the characters are going to go through a downswing. It will end with a more of a high tension cliffhanger, sad, bittersweet, dark tea time of the soul. And let's say, and then book 3, it's about them coming, rising from the ashes. Okay, so that could be an example of how you would start planning it. So if I knew that book 1 is going to involve my main character, let's say, learning, growing, and rising to meet his first challenge, then that means that I now know what I have to get in this first outline, what I have to get done. So if you are doing multiple books, which I don't recommend doing for your first time out of the gate, but if you are doing multiple books, you have to imagine that the whole book series itself is a single story. So this is all about breaking stuff down, and it's all about kind of seeing it as a big picture and then moving lower and lower and lower and lower down into the details. So know where you're going first in general with any kind of a book series information. And you can put it right here, right before your actual outline. Okay, so let's say you have no book series. Let's say you're just doing one book, which is what I recommend doing. You can just ignore this part. We don't need to worry about that book series. We can just go straight into outlining. So the first thing you're going to do is going to do a brief sketch outline. Now, if you're doing a multi-book series, like multiple books in a single series, let's say, you will want to do this brief sketch outline for each of the books. Okay? But you don't have to do the rest of this unless you are more like me and you really want to hammer down some stuff. If your books are linear, have no, let's say, important mysteries, if everything is kind of what you see is what you get, then you can get away with just doing a brief sketch outline for each book that you're planning to write. But if your book is going to be like Dorothy Dinette, you're going to have to do all of the book outlines that I'm going to explain here. Okay, so this is kind of a tough moment for you to decide what kind of book series am I writing. And if you are writing a book series that is more complicated and involved with, let's say, a mystery that spans several arcs, you're going to need to not just do this brief sketch outline, you're going to have to do the plot graph outline and all of that. So let's take a look here. If we go down here, we'll take a look at the different outlines. Okay, so if you have writing for a book series, so what you want to do is for each book, okay, if you're an architect, this is what's going to keep you on track and feel happy and confident. You're going to want to write a brief sketch outline. Okay, so this is for a simple book series. Okay, so there's no hidden mystery, there's no overarching plot, there's nothing that's going to happen in the final book that ties to the first book. It's what you see is what you get. But if you're doing a complex book series with an interlocking narrative, you're going to want to do the brief sketch outline, you're going to want to do the plot graph outline, and you're going to want to do the chapter summary outline for every book all in one go. And this is because you don't want to miss any important information later on down the road and be like, oh shit, I have to go back and rewrite that one scene because I need to add this one little thing in there that's really important for this book now, right? Save yourself time, plan it out. Okay, so if you're doing architectural approach, you're going to go at it with 3 outlines. So let's first look at the brief sketch outline. The brief sketch outline is basically the story in a paragraph. Okay, the story in a paragraph. So you can see here, I'm going to read this paragraph. The story begins when Wynne steals the artifact and sets off the alarm, drawing the shadows to the north. In a bid to save himself, being cursed, and his people, Wynne sets out with Rafe, the Hedge Knight, Carrie, his female friend and the Hedge Knight's goddaughter, and Finn, his close friend. They travel through the wilderness, encounter trials and challenges, grow and mature, and transform. Wynne becomes a man, but Finn is secretly possessed by the shadow. When they reach their destination for sealing, Wynne has to battle his own friend, overcome the shadow, seal the darkness, stop the corruption, and then return home. At the end of the story, Wynne gets the girl, learns more about himself, and brings hope to his friends in the world. Okay, very straightforward story, designed for younger men who just want to have a lot of fun and have a good time reading a book about a cool bro who gets a girl. Okay, so that's the brief sketch outline. So you can see it's very small, and I have to be able to describe the main plot points very succinctly. One way to achieve this is by drawing what I would call your plot mountain, which is a kind of a graph. It's almost like an infographic of your plot, and sometimes that will help you write this very brief sketch outline paragraph. Now, you can also then take this brief sketch outline and flesh it out more into what we call the plot graph outline. So this is very similar to the plot graph image that I just talked about, like the plot graph mountain that you give most students when they start writing. But this is going to be a little bit more involved, okay? So we got a prologue, then we have a hook, then we have the first plot turn, then we have pinch number 1. So you can see here, I'm starting to plot day 1 to 10, midpoint, day 10 to 20, pinch 2, day 20 to 30, plot turn climax, day 30 to 31, and resolution, day 32 onward to day 60. Now you might be going, what? Why are we having the dates? Well, remember what I did with the map, right? So if we go back up here to the map, I determined that we have about 35 days to mess with here. So I'm having them travel within 31 days or so down to that section, right? So they're going from up here all the way down there. And so if we go back down here, we got to track when the time is happening. And so this is where we track it. So we got a prologue, what happens before the story actually happens. We have the hook, which is what would call the ordinary world. We got the call to adventure, meeting the mentor, enemies, allies, the first threshold. So this is a hero's journey, archetypes. And this will happen within basically 1 day. Okay, so this is literally 1 day of happening. This is all going to happen in a space of 12 hours, basically. And then the first pinch is going to be 10 days. So they're going to travel for some days. Then they're going to have their first test. Then they're going to travel for another 10 days. And then they're going to have their second test, which is linked to Carrie. First test is linked to Rafe. Then they're going to travel another 10 days. And they're going to have another test. But this test is for the main character and his friend. Right? And then there's going to be an arrival at the final spot where, you know, we said that Wynne and Finn are going to fight. And then and then he returns home. So that is the basic crunch down in terms of time, in terms of dates, in terms of movements, and in terms of what we are going to see for each character in terms of their development. And you can see that I kept it very simple. It's very, very simple. I did not write a shit ton. I'm not writing the actual book itself. I'm just writing bullet points of what's going to happen, the main scenes, the main beats. So now I take what I wrote up here for the plot graph outline, and I'm going to slot it into the 20 chapters that we predetermined will be happening. So remember, each of these chapters is going to be around 2,000 words long, except probably the prologue will be shorter. But all of these chapters 1, 2, 3, etc., are all going to be only 2,000 words long. So you have to keep that in the back of your mind as you start slotting in what's going to happen where. So here we got chapter 1, what we're doing in chapter 1. Chapter 2, what we're doing in chapter 2. Chapter 3, what we're generally doing in chapter 4. Chapter 4, what we're doing in there. Chapter 5, so on. So you can see now I'm breaking down what we had determined needs to happen to make this story a whole story. We're now breaking it down into different chapters. Pretty straightforward. Pretty straightforward. You can't go wrong with this, really. And it's really crucial that you do this because we're slowly sinking down to the nitty-gritty. And the reason why we want to do that is because it helps us determine, do we have too much in one chapter? What's the pacing looking like? How am I ending the chapters? And so this is where we start thinking about that. This is where we start thinking about it. Okay, so in between, you might be wondering, how much can things change? In this outline section, this is where all of my gardening happens. So a lot of people talk about architects versus gardeners. And there's this kind of assumption that architects have zero gardener in them. That's not true. It's simply that the architect limits their gardener usually to this section here. This is where things get moved around, messed around, daydreamed over, obsessed over, and hammered out. It's simply a way of going about writing that is a bit more organized and more efficiency and goal-oriented, I guess. It is possible that while you're writing, an architect can have a moment where they're like, wait a minute, this doesn't feel right, or this feels contrived, or this would be better or cooler. And of course, a healthy architect, a mature architect, can go back and reassess things from the ground out. But this is simply me trying to show, I guess, that an architect does have moments where they are fooling around and they are having fun and they are iterating. It's simply that they are iterating before putting pen to paper. And this iteration is largely mental, and it's largely infographic related or spreadsheet related, or in this case, a document related with bullet points. So once you have done all of your iteration, once you have moved things around, for example, like some people might write all of these beats onto separate cards and then just kind of shuffle them around and see how they feel. However it is that you're doing it, you need to settle on what is going in which chapter and whether you have too much in one chapter. So you got to keep an eye out for that. Now, of course, if one chapter only ends up being, let's say, 1,500 words, that means you can allot that 500 words to another thicker chapter, but try not to get huge variances between your chapters. I think it's very helpful for readers to feel secure that when they open your book up and they read a chapter, let's say right before bed, they know that it's not going to turn into this long involved thing. It's going to be the set amount of pages. I think that's really crucial for you to provide to your readers. It's just kind of like a safety net for them. Okay. So now you would think, okay, so we got this brief sketch outline, we got this plot graph outline, we got this chapter summary outline, and maybe if you are insane enough to try to write a book series, you might be also having additional outlines kind of referencing all of the books in that series. Okay, so the answer is, are you done outlining? The answer is no. Okay, so now let's get down to the detailed chapter summaries. So for this detailed chapter summary, you're going to want some basic stuff. Okay, so you can see here we have breakdown into chapters. This is also a spreadsheet. You can use this as a spreadsheet, or you can just do what I did, which was with bullet points. And then down here for the chapter summaries, you might want to determine chapter titles, but you don't have to. If you don't want to have a title, you can just say chapter 1. Then you'll want to write down some general information required. So you'll want to put down your general overview, and your general overview can come from your third summary right here, your third summary. And then you will have any additional notes, foreshadowing notes if your book is more complex, whose point of view you're going to be experiencing, and the setting and time locations. And then you're going to break down each scene, determining who is that scene point of view, who's driving that point of view, what other characters, important characters are in the scene, and what events happen in that scene. And some chapters can have multiple scenes. That's absolutely fine. And some chapters can have multiple points of views. So, for example, Dorothy Dinette will have multiple points of views in a single chapter that are broken by scene. Totally fine. A lot of modern, more simple authors will choose to have one chapter, one character point of view. That's also a-okay. It's up to you. It's up to you what effect you want to achieve. If this chapter only has one point of view, obviously, you don't have to say that the scene is that character, because it's clear that's that character, right? But if your chapter has multiple points of view, then of course you want to delineate which scene is happening when, what's happening in that scene, and whose point of view is driving that scene. And you will do this for all of your chapters, all of them. So you're not just going to start writing with this, third summary or the chapter summaries. You're going to actually break it down further. So let's take a little look here. So here we have a detailed chapter summary. There's a prologue. Here's the general information required. Long ago, a shadow grew, blah, blah, blah. And if we go all the way up here to the top of this chapter summary, you can see here, I say outline the original issue, right? So that's what that would be. So you could copy and paste that right down. Or in my case, I wanted to add more. I wanted to add more information. So notes, important world building information. So here you can see I would talk about the location of the portal, information on how the seal works. I want to have some sort of foreshadowing that the spirit of the hero is trapped in the seal. The unknown narrator, maybe Rafe. And here is the times and the dates. And unknown narrator with an elevated style. The characters in the scene will involve Rafe, a mage, a hero, and Carrie's father. And here are the events that are going to be described in this prologue. Then chapter 1, we have, once again, general information required. So we have a general overview. So here's the general overview. Then we're going to have some notes about the artifact description, the political situation, Wynn's attitude, Finn's attitude, foreshadowing notes. So I'm going to start laying the foundation for how Wynn and Finn have a close bond, but hint at other less conscious divisions. The point of view for this whole chapter is going to be Wynn, and the setting, the time and location is going to be Albios. And there's going to be certain districts that are going to be touched on. So, of course, I could take time and fill that in as well. Okay. Then here we have a scene breakdown. So here's scene 1, Win and his family. I'm going to devote 700 words to this. The characters in the scene, the location. He's preparing to go out for a night on the town, talking with his mother, who asks about his studies, and he lies about his work. Mom reminds him of his family's expectations, and we get a glimpse into how hard mom and dad work for the family. Then we touch on the family's occupations. Bugged by his younger sisters to bring them home treats, but he makes them a promise, shows his basic good nature. Leaving the house, have Win thinking about his family and highlight their lower station and Win's personal ambitions. Highlight class system and differences in wealth and power. So that's one scene. And you can do that with scene 2, Win and his friends in the bed, 700 words. Here are the characters in the scene, the location. Describe the drunken beetle. Have the boys drinking light beer and behaving like fooligans, fake dueling, posturing. Then there's a conversation. Then there's a bet. Now, as you can guess, 700 words, that's a bit tight. So once again, if you have to go over that a little bit, like don't beat yourself up. But you could see that this is kind of like a direction that you're going in. And honestly, putting something as short as 700 words or 1,000 words can really empower you to feel like, oh, I can get this done, right? It's only 700 words. It's only 1,000 words. So it's almost like the bite-sized nature of each scene allows you to feel more confident to finish it. So once you finish it, you can move on to the next scene and so on and so forth. So you can fill in more and more as time goes on. And that is the general fiction book outline that is quite useful for people like myself. Many architects will appreciate having a solid book outline before they embark on writing, particularly when it involves writing a huge book series. Now, of course, you might be thinking, well, I don't like Word docs. I don't like working digitally. I like using analog. You can do this whole thing on paper. I have done this kind of thing on paper before. Even for fan fiction, I've put some work into some of my fanfics. Very similar to this. Very similar. Not quite, because obviously back then I wasn't a ghostwriter. This is something that we use to, a version of this, let's say, is something that we use to communicate with our client and to ensure that everyone's on the same page. And that's very important when you are a ghostwriter. Ghostwriting is not always easy to succeed at, because half of the issue is communications and people not knowing what they want. And a book outline is a fantastic way to concretize your ideas and empower you to get writing. Yeah, that's about it. That's about it. It's not easy. And if it's your first book outline, things can get really wonky. But if you are interested in trying this out for yourself, seeing how this might help hone your vision for a specific narrative, and get you writing, if this is any help at all, let me know. If you have any questions, or if you would like to get a link to a copy of this outline, you can always reach out to me. You can comment down below if you would like to get a link to this kind of thing, and I can see about hooking you up with this outline. But once again, I don't want to just say, oh, this is the only way to do shit, right? You might be a gardener, and this outline might be scaring the heck out of you. So don't do it, right? If you have a method that works for you and you are feeling productive and happy with your output, then, keep trekking. Good luck with that. Just have fun. But if you are, thinking, hey, I need a change up, I need to rethink this writing thing, or I just feel really, disempowered to complete a book because people just talk about just write and stuff, and I just don't feel confident about just writing. This kind of thing might be something that could help you. Really, it could be. And you shouldn't let yourself get bamboozled by how some people talk about writing as if it's some kind of like navel gazing, feel your core kind of experience. You can go at writing your book in a very, very intentional way. And I think that's what I really want to say is true about being an architectural writer like myself. It's about being intentional. It's about knowing what you want to achieve and getting there. And I'm providing with you something that has enabled me to finish quite a few projects for clients, quite a few projects for myself. And this kind of approach might seem a little overwhelming at the beginning, but it's honestly very helpful if you are more architectural or you really enjoy organization before you start writing. And as I said, there are other ways of planning, and maybe next time I will go into looking at this, for example. Yeah. So this is another way of hammering something out. And that sounds crazy. But if you're doing a multi-series with massive amounts of complex narratives feeding into each other, this is where you start to really think about, how is this going to work? Is it really going to work? How can I make this easier to kind of adhere to? And honestly, at the end of the day, however you're doing it, it doesn't have to be as intense. It could be as simple as this. It could be more intense like this. And I might go through spreadsheet outlines another day. I realized that I've now been talking for about an hour. So I'm going to save the spreadsheet outlining strategy for another day. But long story short, you can also plan books in spreadsheets, which I love me a good spreadsheet. So if you know how to use a spreadsheet really well, you can also do basically the same kind of stuff in a spreadsheet in terms of these detailed chapter summaries. I like the detailed chapter summaries and this Word document in terms of planning it right before I'm writing it. So I will usually do all of this beginning stuff. So the general information, market research, structure, style, and genre, tropes, themes, and motifs, story elements, setting, lore. I'll do large portions of that on an outline like this. Okay. All the lore. But then when it comes time to doing the outlines, I will sometimes switch to something like this. And the reason why is because sometimes a spreadsheet can give you kind of like a larger picture of your books or your single book. And it's very helpful for you to organize your outline before you put the outline into your Google Sheet, your Google document here. So anyway, so there's a whole raft of ways that you can actually outline your book, whether you're doing it in a notebook, whether you're doing it on Google Docs, or whether you're doing a combo of Google Doc and Google Spreadsheet. It's up to you, really. Maybe in the future I will show a few other ways that I have organized my writing beforehand. This is just one way. And this is the way that I actually did a lot of writing for clients when I was a ghostwriter. So yeah, that's about it. Leave your comments and questions in the comment section down below, and I will see you all next time.